it is a very good morning to you all, and welcome to the Breakfast Club right here on Asake, where we talk about crucial issues that affect us on a day-to-day basis. So this morning I am joined by the board chairperson of Buy Zimbabwe, and why we've invited him to the show is just to talk, of course, about how government has relaxed duty on goods and commodities coming from South Africa and the likes, and its impact generally on service delivery, on the manufacturing industry, as well as the value chain. Good morning, Mr. Hwengwere, and thank you so much for joining us.
Morning.
All right, so first of all, Buy Zimbabwe's endeavor has always been to help the economy and to make sure that there's growth and appreciation of indigenous products in Zimbabwe. So with this new levy by the government, how has the government's decision essentially affected people buying into Zimbabwean products?
What is critical is to put everything in context. And the context is that Buy Zimbabwe's interest is to promote goods that are made in Zimbabwe in terms of its value chain. We promote it for both the domestic market and then the international market. And therefore, for us, it's very critical that we always get preference in terms of our products and services on the local market. Now, over the past few weeks, Zimbabwe's economy has been a very interesting position. We've had currency issues, we've had price volatility, we have had some goods that have been erratic in terms of their availability on the shelves. And in response to that, the government, among many other measures, then came up with a statutory instrument that says, in terms of these basic products, you are allowed to, the tariffs with respect to imports will be lowered. That's what happened. And so the question has been, doesn't this reverse the gains that have been made by the local industry? Doesn't this go against the very ethos of Buy Zimbabwe in terms of ensuring that we always have greater preference when it comes to policy measures, particularly from government? The answer is yes and no.
Why yes and why no?
Allowing it to be to lower tariffs at best and assuming the imports are cheaper would then undermine those that are packaging here. But let's remember, the bulk of the material is actually imported. The cooking oil is imported. So the impact to that extent is limited. But also, from a consumer point of view, cooking oil a month ago was $2.50 per 2 liters. Now it's above $5 US per 2 liters. What has happened? In the main is the war in Russia and the Ukraine. Because cooking oil is increased across the whole world. South Africa, Botswana, UK, the US. So that one is an exogenous issue. Salt. Zimbabwe does not make salt, but it has been in short supply. Why? Something to do with factories in Botswana and the flood situation in Durban. It's an imported problem. But again, at best, we affect the packaging industry because cooking oil is packaged in Zimbabwe, but it is an imported product. So to that extent, again, no. But let's go to the other extreme side of the coin, sugar. Sugar is in the main made in Zimbabwe from Munyaradzi.
Yes.
A place close to where I am right now. Zimbabwe always has a cyclical problem with sugar supply. Between April, May, every year, we have a problem with supplies of sugar. I suspect from government point of view, it was, oh, look at what those guys they are doing. They are up to no good. But sugar is available. And sugar, if you look in US dollar terms, it has only gone up by no more than 15% and maybe at most 20%. Is the contrast with with cooking oil, which has gone up by over 100%. Sugar is under supply. That may affect the local industry, assuming the imports are cheaper. But as of now, we have not seen what happens. But that may actually affect Zimbabwe.
All right.
Then you look at maize meal. We had a very erratic season last year. It rained when the crops are dead. When the crops need it the most, the rain disappears. You know, it was it was spookish. It rained. We had a spookish rainfall a season. You know, it had a character of its own. And because we rely in the main on rain-fed agriculture, and we don't have regularity of supply ourselves, that then affected the output. So we have a problem with maize because it makes sense to open up because our local supplies won't be sufficient. In general, what you find is that there are areas where government should have been better informed and said, this area is not problematic. There are areas where, yes, we are not trying to operate in an enclave, close ourselves from the real world. And of course, we rely on imported material. But I think in some senses, it made sense. In some senses, better consultations would have been there. But having said that,
okay,
what
sorry,
comes
just
up clearly is that where you don't have production locally, you are vulnerable from both availability and pricing point of view. That is the problem. The problem is that we are not producing as much as we should.
All right. So just to interject there was a quote which was put up by a tweet rather by the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Information, that is Nick Mangwana, and he said this. He says, farmers in Munyaradzi produce the sugarcane as outgrowers. So sugar is a wholly local product. Someone spikes the price unjustifiably. Government says fine citizens can buy where the price is favorable rather than allow them to be held at ransom by someone's greed. Iwe Woshora, close quotes. So do you agree with his sentiments in regards to trying to close that gap in people raising the prices of sugar?
I think it's a statement that could have been better informed, because, like I said, we forgot as a country that there's a cyclical nature of sugar. And that even last year, April, the year before, April also, we had shortages of sugar. And when you ever have, laws of supply and demand, when the product is less, prices go up, there's arbitrage, people take advantage. But we always know that price is self-correct. But if you look at it as well, in US dollar terms, prices of sugar have not substantially gone up.
Yes, yes.
I'm giving an example of cooking oil. Cooking oil has gone up by over 100%. Compare that with sugar. And that tells you that it's actually, we are looking at the problem from the wrong places.
All right.
So better understanding of the nature of the production cycle would inform better policy.
Okay, absolutely. So looking at how you're talking about it in terms of being more informed, what are the repercussions that we are going to face as a country when it comes to now importing certain products? Like you've highlighted that, yes, of course, there is the war in Ukraine, which has led, of course, to high oil prices. If you look, it's a global thing. South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, all experiencing high prices when it comes to the prices of cooking oil and the likes. But then what are the long-term consequences of this move by government to remove duty on products coming into Zimbabwe? What do you think are the long-term effects?
I'm saying, to the goods that we don't produce, it basically means we are vulnerable to whatever the world does. For instance, if there is serious shortage, the prices are going to keep on going up. So if there is a further deterioration in the availability of product of oil, and we are in the main relying on imported oil. What it will mean is that if the price shoots up in Russia or in Ukraine by another 100%, that cost will be passed on. So we will have to respond to whatever the world wants us to respond to. Fertilizer, if it goes up in the short supply, it goes up because you don't have your own. It's like at home, you have your kids, but the food that you need to eat, you must depend from your neighbor. If your neighbor decides, no, I'm going to marry another wife, and they have 20 more children, and I'm going to limit the supply to your house, to your own house, you will have to beg them and say, okay, what about if I pay you twice? What about if I also come and become your wife? What about if so it means you are vulnerable. You must grow your own garden. You must build your own base so that you are less vulnerable to, because we forget as Zimbabwe sometimes that every country has its interest.
Yes. And
this thing of thinking my neighbor loves me more than I love myself is for lack of a better word, is cocaine. So that's really the challenge of not investing in your local value chain, particularly given the global uncertainty right now. I mean, we were taught in school that globalization is an equalizer. It results in, but COVID taught us no, it's not. Ukraine, Russia has taught us no, it's not. So everything that has happened over the last 3 years is telling us that if you are not self-sufficient as a country, then you are very vulnerable to whatever happens in the world.
All right, and then looking at government stance in terms of making Zimbabwean self-sufficient, in terms of mechanizations when it comes to farming inputs and the likes. Do you feel like government is doing enough in that particular area, particularly when it comes to production of foodstuffs, whether it's your soya beans and the likes? Do you feel government is doing enough, and what can they do to better that situation such that we are self-sufficient and we are a breadbasket at some point as Zimbabweans, particularly with running
I think that the problem with Zimbabwe, the problem with Africa and Zimbabwe in particular, we have too much government in our heads, and that takes off the responsibility from myself. I have a place that I work on, Palawani Lake World Resort. I have a dam. I don't have vegetables there. So, and I was telling my team, so do you want the government to come and grow a coffee for you? We government must also stop spoon feeding people, because you will be in diapers when you are in your 20s or in your 30s, because your mother never allowed you to walk. So the minute the government also comes straight to people and say, you have a responsibility to feed yourself, to think, to innovate, rather than, oh, I have from foods, I'm going to bring you fertilizer, I'm going to give you a seed, I'm going to do that, I'm going to pray for the rain to rain on your field, and I'm going to bring a truck to take it to GMB, and GMB is going to give you a good price, and I'm going to thank you for a job well done. And I think that is the challenge that we have in Africa, where good intentions, love for children, love for citizens, but which is not managed. So you are continuously retooling, you are continuously being protected, and we are not taking responsibility. So we need to get into a cultural change as Africans and take a bit more responsibility. And government needs to identify those outliers, those people who are the front line of innovation, and then say, what constraint do you have? How can I help you? Whether it's technical knowledge, whether it's funding, but only help those that can help themselves. So I think we need to reevaluate the way we see ourselves. I have said I admire a person that we should not admire. not because of what they did, but because they came from the UK as a sickly 17-year-old white man to a jungle called Africa. They were coming to look for a place to escape from death. By the time he died at a young age of 48, he had colonized us here and named us after himself, Rhodesia. We were here. And when roads came to Zimbabwe, there were no roads, but he built roads. There was no wagon. There was so much constraints, fly. The movement was bad and all that. But what they understood was that the resource that was in the country is what would get them to build. And they did that. So I don't admire because he conquered my country and he did many bad things. But I think if there's anything we can learn from Cecil John Rhodes is the ability to use your resources to make your world better. And I said, if he could do it, why not me, who is actually a resident, who is a Manawe, so to speak. So I think that thinking is what is lacking. And the policy in government, government must stop spoon feeding people too much.
Okay, very interesting sentiments there that you have, Mr. Hwengwere. And then, of course, in light of Buy Zimbabwe and some of the strides that it has done in terms of getting people to buy into Zimbabwean products, are you happy with the strides that Buy Zimbabwe has taken in the last, say, decade?
Yes, and no. Yes, in the sense that when we started Buy Zimbabwe, I mean, the discussion that we've had this year when government came up with those tariff measures is the opposite to what we had in 10, 11 years when we started. When we started, Zimbabweans believed that they have no right to produce for themselves. Now, Zimbabweans are complaining to government that, oh, you're killing industry. We now have spokespeople who are saying, oh, why did government do this? 10 years back, people were saying government must do this. So there's been a radical shift in the mindset of people. When we started, our idea was to get companies that produce in Zimbabwe to identify with Zimbabwe and say, I'm a quality Zimbabwean product, I'm environmentally conscious, I have local content, I employ Zimbabwean. And you have an insignia. A lot of companies, there were some international companies who said, I will not do that. Today, we have hundreds and thousands of products with the Buy Zimbabwe insignia. Even as we speak now, if you go to your nearest, certainly the largest wholesalers and Richards, for instance, over 80% of goods on their shelves are produced in Zimbabwe. So to that extent, very well done. But there are two issues here. The mining industry in Zimbabwe, which is projected to go 12 billion, over 70% of the inputs into the mining industry are imported. So literally what it does is that, like for instance, mining industry brought 4.8 billion in this last year. It means 70% of their inputs were actually imported. So money literally flows in here and goes out. So the value chain, so you don't have towns like Shabani. You have a lot of growth, but you don't see, I have not seen at Newtown, by the way, in the last 20 plus years from mining. But mining used to build towns, cities. That is a weakness. And then when you also look at the local content, even of the so-called Zimbabwean produce, like I said, cooking oil by and large, the bulk of it is imported. And yet we have groundnuts, we have maize, and we have sunflower, we have cotton seed. So you see, there are areas where, yes, the mindset has transformed, but the structural rigidity has remained. And so even when we made the money that we made as a country, close to 9.6, 9.8 billion last year, the largest ever, 1980. But the fact is that most of it went into imports. So we are speaking of money, but people say, but I have nothing to show for it. I am as poor as I was when I was making $1. You are telling me I'm making 1,000, but how come I'm poor? So that's the scenario we have.
Yeah, very sad scenario. And, you know, I feel like Zimbabwe, yes, obviously we do have issues. And like you said, which there are issues within the value chain as well, and that we can change things. It's not up to the government only. We need to also start moving as well as a country as well. Any parting shots today as we discuss this issue of the government removing levy on certain products coming into the country?
If there is any upside to the Ukrainian war, it is to show that you are your own savior. So this thing where Zimbabweans have always thought someone there loves me more than I love myself, I'm hoping COVID, Ukraine has shown us that it is not true. You know, I'm reminded when we started with 75% local content, we even had jurists that came to country. George Bishop, the late, came and said, you are violating human rights. I said, why are we violating human rights? He says, because Zimbabweans love foreign music. So when you take foreign music from them, you are denying them of their right to choose. But when we listen today to Japreza, Winky D, XQ, Nati O, all these young people that have come, which sometimes we forget, it is the same thing when it comes to product to services. You make money, you create wealth from what you produce. Every cent that is in the pocket, you can either choose it to enable another person who is outside your family or to help your family. So the mindset, the wealth creation mindset that we have in Africa is weak. We were so colonized so much that we believe the guy who beat you up, who chained you for slavery, took you to America, somehow that guy wants you to prosper. And therefore, even though you have the greatest agricultural land, you have the greatest climates and all that, you are beggars and you even love begging. So I think we need to work on a mindset that says you are your own economic liberator. And you also need to make on a one mindset that said government is government. And government comes with its own constraints, with its own biases and all that. It begins with you, your mind and your idea into the future. So you need an African who understands their own responsibility and who can work to change their own life journey and destiny.
Okay, thank you so much for that enlightening conversation, Mr. Hwengwere. We look forward to having you live right here at our studios at SIDE. But thank you so much for coming through and just having this important conversation with us. And we wish you all the best with all your future endeavors.